A warm welcome to everyone who's joining us once again on the B-BBEE Commission podcast series. If you are new, welcome, and we do urge you to watch all of our previous episodes because there was so much important content that colleagues from the Commission itself had to share with us. But today I'm excited that we're talking about enterprise and supplier development. This is one of the first entry points for young people and anyone really who's interested in business to get integrated into different supply chains across industries: mining, retail, textile, manufacturing, you name it. So if you're looking for an economic opportunity and want to find yourself playing with the big companies in certain industries, this is the conversation that will guide you and tell you how the BEE Act itself makes provisions for enterprises as well as suppliers to get involved in the economy. And today I'm joined by colleagues from the Commission, Josephine Shika, as well as Peter Koape. Thank you so much once again for joining us for today's episode. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation because I think a lot of young people find themselves getting their first opportunities, through ESD programs. So perhaps we can start off the conversation, Josephine, by defining really what an ESD program is.
Okay, thank you, Stanley. So Enterprise and Supplier Development. We look into three different sub-elements within this element, and Enterprise and Supplier Development mainly looks into making sure that there's procurement towards entities that are owned by Black people, and also there's more financial investment towards businesses that are still growing. This is done through supplier development and enterprise development, whereby we assist the startups and the upcoming companies or small companies to make sure that they develop and are able to eventually sustain themselves and participate within the economic mainstream.
Thank you so much. And ESD is one of the three priority elements of a BBEE scorecard. How does ESD become a pillar or priority area rather that is distinctly different from the other priority areas, and what makes it unique? Perhaps Peter, you can take us through that.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. So as you said, that ESD is actually a priority element, meaning that if an entity or measured entity rather does not score the 40% sub-minimum points as per the three sub-elements within the ESD, which is your preferential procurement, your enterprise development, and your supply development, they will then be discounted a level down. So I think when the legislature actually put these clauses in, it knew that the enterprise and supply development is a crucial element which will elevate entities to becoming larger enterprises at the end of the day.
And who should benefit from ESD programs? Who's the typical business owner who should fit right into ESD programs?
Yeah, so in terms of the beneficiaries for your ESD, you first need to distinguish between the two categories of beneficiaries. So the first one is your enterprise development beneficiary. So this is the one that you will source out from the market which you are operating in. Then for your supply development, you look at those who are in your direct supply chain database. Okay. So for your government entities, for instance, you look at the National Treasury Central Supplier Database to source out your beneficiaries for your supply development. So these, you look at your 51% Black owned enterprises as well as 100% Black women enterprises.
And perhaps to also engage on how companies are supposed to determine how much they spend on ESD programs. Josephine, could you take us through the process of how companies are supposed to determine how much they spend on ESD programs, and what sort of benefits for large enterprises actually come with spending on that?
Okay, thank you for that. So firstly, with enterprise and supplier development, we look into the three subcategories, right? So on enterprise development, the measured entity actually needs to spend 1% of its net profit after tax towards initiatives under the ESD element. And with supplier development, they spend 2% of its net profit after tax towards the initiatives. But this is for the generic entities. There are certain or different net profit after tax targets for entities that fall within different sector codes. So there's a every sector code has its own requirements as to how much a measured entity needs to spend towards these initiatives. So it's also important for people to make sure that they understand the sector that they fall under and what are the requirements within that sector code.
Are there any benefits for companies that spend more than the required amounts as per the sector codes?
Not really. It's just that you would be assisting the beneficiary in this instance. We always do advocate for spending more money towards ESD beneficiaries, because ESD element is one of the elements that would assist a lot of upcoming and small companies to grow. So we want to see more money growing to these companies, or more support, even if it's non-financial, but more support going to the small companies so that they can also grow.
Just to add on that, in terms of the scorecard, you have bonus points in terms of the ESD element, whereby if one or more two companies, you create one or more jobs in terms of your initiatives under enterprise development, you get the bonus point. Yeah. Yes, and if the enterprise development beneficiary graduates to become a supplier, then you get a bonus point. So those are some of the mechanisms that will encourage large enterprises to actually groom small enterprises to become suppliers.
Yeah, and I think that is very incentivizing. And for corporates that maybe don't want to execute an ESD program themselves, how can they engage third parties that are able to execute those programs? And what criteria do those third parties need to meet as well to ensure that they are credible enough and knowledgeable enough to implement an ESD program?
Okay, so it's one of the way that companies go through to say that if, for instance, we don't have enough capacity to make sure that we run an ESD program, rather we get a company that specializes in making sure that they can recruit ESD beneficiaries and then roll out the beneficiaries to the benefits to them rather. So the company would just need to identify a company that they can trust to make sure that they can also align the objectives of the measured company and that of the beneficiary, to make sure that even though the program is run by a third party, but it's still aligned to what the measured company wants to achieve at the end of the day, what their BE strategy seeks to achieve, and also what their ESD strategies seek to aim at in making sure that small companies are growing. So it is one of the platforms that measured companies undertake to make sure that not to say that we can't do it ourselves as a measured entity, but if we can get another entity to do it for us, then it's much better that way.
And perhaps, Peter, take us through how a company can actually verify or prove that they've spent X amount on an ESD program. What are some of those processes?
Yes, so in terms of the verification manual, they need to provide a confirmation letter that they did in fact receive the benefit that the measured entity is claiming, as well as the B certificate or the sworn affidavit that is utilized by the beneficiary. Yes, and then invoices, proof that they were actually invoiced for that particular initiative and so forth. So those are the type of information that is needed when it comes to verification.
Yeah. And Josephine, what do you think corporations need to take into consideration when they onboard smaller enterprises in the ESD programs? From your engagement with smaller enterprises, what do they say they actually need from an ESD program, and how can companies with ESD programs work to ensure that their program is relevant and responsive to the needs of small businesses?
Yeah, so one of the things we always advise measured entities to do is to actually do a needs analysis with the beneficiary entity, just so that they can understand what kind of needs the company has. Say, for instance, they've already received funding from one of our funding institutions. But however, in order to make sure that the company would be able to make profits and be able to be sustainable at the end of the day or after the program, there's also mentoring and coaching or other financial or non-financial assistance that a measured entity can assist a small company with. So making sure that at least you understand what kind of needs they have, so that you don't just give them a grant of 10 million, if I can give an example, whereas they only need just 2,000 to start and maybe buy the goods or buy the machinery they need to start their company. So do not give them a lot of money when they don't need it, or don't give them money if they don't actually need, but they need another assistance. So making sure that you understand what their needs are, and also making sure that when you sign contracts with them, ESD beneficiary contracts, you make sure that you detail what kind of benefit you're granting to the company, and also if there's a term to it, if there's a duration, if it's a 5-year contract, for instance, make sure that you include such things in the contract so that even the beneficiary can be aware that every year I'm going to be getting $1 million from this company through me being an ESD beneficiary of the company.
And perhaps it would be interesting to understand, maybe from some of the research that the Commission has done, do small businesses tend to survive and accelerate in their growth after ESD programs, or have there been challenges that have been identified in the growth of businesses?
I think it's two ways. We've received a lot of compliments with the ESD program to say that it's helping a lot of small companies, because you can be an enterprise development beneficiary, and now once you've received enough contribution from the measured entity, you're now able to grow and even be a supplier to that measured entity. So that is a good testimony to say, through the assistance of the measured entity, I've now grown to become a supplier. But then we also get such stories to hear that I was promised a grant, or I was promised a certain benefit in terms of the ESD element, but such never came to the company. So that's why I'm saying that it's two ways. It benefits if it's done right. The beneficiaries enjoy the benefits if they are granted to them. However, if the measured entity just seeks to being a front, then it becomes a problem to the beneficiary, because they would be promised things that don't actually come to the measured entity.
And perhaps, Peter, you can take us through some of the consequences that might ensue from fronting within an ESD context specifically.
Yeah, so in terms of the penalties, they're more or less the same as your generic fronting practice penalties, whereby one will be fined, pay their net profit after tax, and a 10-year imprisonment in terms of those transgressions that may occur through your ESD. Yes. So, and then in terms of the other legislation where you can be banned, there you can be banned from doing business with the state, as well as being banned to do any tenders through the National Treasury CSD.
Sure. Don't make a promise you can't keep, essentially. And in any advice you can give to beneficiary entities, perhaps Josephine, what must beneficiary entities not do?
To put it simply, they should not be willing fronters. So, for instance, one of the initiatives under the SD element is that a company, a measured entity, can claim points for making early payments to the beneficiary. So then now beneficiaries should not backdate the documents to show that a payment was done earlier when it has not been done earlier. So just to make sure that they do business properly, they should not fear the measured entity and try to do things that benefits the measured entity and not themselves, because at the end of the day, the measured entity would be looking into claiming BEE points, even though there's contribution going to the beneficiary, but they're also getting a benefit in this instance by claiming triple BEE points. So if beneficiaries sense or see that there might be misrepresentation in some way, then they should not be scared to communicate such. The BEE Commission is always open to receive such matters, so they can be able to come to the BEE Commission and complain to say, this is what's going on, what do I do? Even if it's just an advice to say, they want me to backdate the payment dates, for instance, so that we can be able to take actions in that instance.
Yeah, and just as a parting shot from you both, how would you encourage larger enterprises to continue investing in ESD spend? Peter, you can start us off.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit for them to implement, as we've mentioned, that it's a priority element and it carries the most points out of all the elements in the scorecard. So that's a great incentive for them to then actually implement the said element. Yeah.
Josephine?
I think mine would be to do it for the right reasons. Don't make it just a tick box to say we want to give 10 million to beneficiaries and make it a blanket approach whereby you give all the beneficiaries the same benefits. So make sure that you don't make it a tick box exercise. You actually understand and get in touch with the beneficiary so that you can understand how the measured entity and the beneficiary can work together.
Yeah, I think as our final parting shot, how can young entrepreneurs or small businesses find ESD programs actually? Are those available on the Commission's websites, or are there other dedicated websites that people who are watching can actually go and look for ESD opportunities in?
Measured entities normally are the ones that go looking for the beneficiaries, but we always advise that beneficiaries can also go to the measured entities and present their companies and present what their needs are, and see that maybe they can be an assistance that comes through, because there's a bit of a misalignment honestly between measured entities that want beneficiaries and beneficiaries that actually want benefits from measured entities. So if they can both contact each other, then it could be very great for the ESD element.
Yeah. Thank you so much, colleagues. As you've heard, go out and look for those opportunities. Look at the BEE Commission's websites, as well as large enterprises that you may know of that may have ESD programs that you can participate in. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.